Hey, Scott. Are you there? Oh, you're muted. I don't know if I can unmute you or not. There you are.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just getting set up here, so.
Me too. I have to clean off my desk and clean off the couch.
Yeah, I have to get the cat off my desk. Yeah, this is Black Cat. He's always on my lap.
Oh, that's fun.
He's totally asleep right now, so.
Oh, look. I used to have a black one with she had a white face and a white belly and white paws.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We called her Sock.
Yeah, this one came with the name Spooky, but we bounced back and forth between that and Blackjack.
Oh, that's nice. So I emailed you back.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm good with whatever. So.
Okay. I don't know what's good around here. I mean, the Mexican place is always good, but I could go for a fast food sandwich too. So.
What'd you say? The first thing?
Oh, sorry. I don't know what's good around here. So, the Mexican place would probably be all right. Or even, I could go for a fast food sandwich or something too. So.
What kind of food do you like?
I like a lot of stuff. I mean, really. I love to cook. So anything that's, I don't know. I got a lot of comfort foods and I got a lot of stuff that I really like. So
gotcha.
I'm down for anything.
Have you ever been to Coyote Kitchen next to Walmart?
No, I haven't. I've been over there, but I haven't gone in it.
It's good.
Okay.
If you
sounds good.
We can meet there, and it's an easy place. There's lots of great places downtown, but parking is always an issue when you go down there.
Yeah, sure.
So I try to make recommendations that aren't down there. But it's like a mixture between, it's like Caribbean, and they've got a vegetarian bent to them a little bit.
Okay. So more fresh type foods and stuff.
Yeah, it's really good, high quality stuff. So
yeah, good. Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, and we're on the calendar for 11:15 on Monday, right?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep, that sounds great.
And I'll meet you at Coyote Kitchen.
Sounds good. I'll put it in my calendar now. Does this sound right? I'm using I've got a real mic set up here. Does it sound okay?
Oh, it sounds great. I'm sure you sound a ton better than I do. Are you doing podcasting?
No, but I used to do, I had an internet radio station about, 10 years, 2008 or 9.
Yeah.
Back before any of it was really going on. And that's what I've got a lot of gear left over from that. So.
Wow.
Yep.
I've played around with the idea of podcasting, but it's going to take me a while. I've got other things on my burners first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it could, I don't know what your clientele is, but I mean, if you want to, I could probably help you with that. It's, staying focused and interviewing other people that are really successful in the field and so forth, what do you do that's so successful? And, and everybody's like, ooh, that's awesome. That way, it's kind of cool because that'll tie their expert information with you.
Absolutely.
Which is a really cool association to have,
Yeah. Maybe we could talk about that once Tyler talks to us tonight. And I think he's probably just going to dial in as a voice caller. But okay. Once Tyler talks to us tonight, depending on how many people we have on, maybe we should talk about podcasts. I actually was a guest on a podcast back in November.
Oh, cool.
And it's the guys in Australia. But I got acquainted with him in a Facebook group. And he has recommended me as a guest for another podcaster, which I'm doing a call with him on Monday the 18th. Is that next week?
What is next week?
No, it's Monday week. Yeah. So I think that's kind of cool. I did the awesome. One, and now that's connected me to something else, which is really nice. So.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. Tyler called me a few minutes ago and said, hey, I'm on the road. I'm driving. I'm going to have to call in.
Well,
How
that's
do
all
I do
right.
that? So,
Here, I'm just going over here to my other computer. I'm going to put the calendar. That way I know where to go, because if I don't have it in the calendar, I'll forget about it.
yeah. I'm the same way. I was telling a girl I met with today that if it doesn't make it onto my calendar, it's not happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it does not. If it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. So I'm really freaked out about my lighting here, and my problem is my glasses.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. So trying to play around with that.
One thing you could do is you could take, if you have any like wax paper or something, because it'll help get rid of some of the glare and soften up the light a little bit.
Look at you. That's a great idea. And I do have some, but I'll wait till next time.
Yeah. It's hard to get tape to stick to it, though, so I use clothespins.
Oh, and I have plenty of those too.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know if I've talked about it, but I work with greeting cards a lot. So I
Yeah, that's right. Send out cards.
I actually have a lot of cards displayed in my house. And so a lot of those are displayed with clothespins.
Oh, right. Cool.
Yeah. I've got an old piece of barnwood that somebody has put together for me, and then they've hung some wire, on it. And so I've got a bunch of them on there, and
Cool.
got another rack somewhere else. And I made myself a little vision. I don't know if you see that frame. It may look like a
Oh,
mirror,
cool.
but it's really not. It just has a bunch of stuff clothespinned to it. So I need to update it. I made it a couple years ago, but I don't know where Tyler is.
It's all right. I recently heard, was in a book that I heard about send out cards. They were using that. It was a book about phone scripts, and that was one of the methods he used for follow up for using, like as part of the funnel and part of the whole top of mind
Right.
thing. Yeah, which I thought was really cool. And then I looked it up, and I'm like, that's actually a really great program.
Oh gosh. And it's so it's been kind of life-changing for me, so it's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Tyler, are you there?
Melee? Hi, it's Tyler. Sorry, I had a hard time getting the code punched in while I was
That's
driving.
okay. I mean, you are driving after all, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, there's a couple of us here, but I think I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes to see if anybody else joins in, because I had at least 2 other people tell me they would be on tonight. So
Sure, no problem.
hang in there. Tyler, I was telling Don that you were going to be on the call tonight, and he goes, "Oh, we need to schedule an appointment with him." I said, "I know."
I was just coming from a meeting where it's a sort of like a junior chamber of commerce meeting, and yes, I had many of the same same conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure that people do that to you all the time. Man, I really need to talk to you.
Yes, I get that a lot, but fortunately, it's for usually constructive purposes. Rarely is it for something that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, just so I'll give you a little bit of information about the group. And I'm pretty sure Scott looks in the Meetup app some about the group, but it might be informational for him too. So I'm going to look and actually give you the numbers of the members that we have in the group. We are now 31 members, and some of those folks are off the mountain. Some are in East Tennessee. Some are, I met yesterday with one of the gentlemen in the group, and he actually lives in Creston, North Carolina. So we've got some people from here in the Boone area, and then we've got some people who are off the mountain but paying attention to the stuff that we're doing in the Meetup group itself. My hope is that come April, we'll be able to meet in person rather than online, I think that we might get some really great participation if we can do an in-person meetup, but it's not been feasible in the winter months. You never know, what the weather's going to do. So that's what we've been trying to avoid.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll go ahead and get us started then. Scott, Tyler Moffatt is a local attorney who acts as kind of an on-contract, like in-house counsel for some businesses up here, mostly for businesses that really can't afford to have somebody in-house all the time. So they contracted Tyler to do some of those things for them. He can help folks set up an LLC. He can help you with any negotiations or litigations you might have, but he also likes to help folks just get things set up right so that they don't end up needing his services in the litigation field. He and his wife Amanda run Moffatt and Moffatt up here in Boone, and they also do some real estate work out of their office. So they're kind of an all services law firm, but Tyler's main focus is on business. So
Very
he
cool.
and I are in a group called the Boone Business Exchange together, and I get to hear Tyler give his 60-second pitch every week. And I thought he would be a good person to come on and talk to us a little bit about some things that we as network marketers, direct sellers, solopreneurs, that we need to be thoughtful about. And so he agreed to do that. So I'm thankful for that, Tyler, and I'm going to be quiet and let you go.
Sure. Thank you. I can certainly kind of give a spiel about small business ownership and sort of the legal aspects of entrepreneurship. I'm happy to do that. At the same time, I'm happy to field any direct questions. A lot of times when I talk to groups of people, it ends up being sort of a ask a lawyer kind of situation, which people find usually more useful than me just spouting off some information. But Maylee you did a great job summarizing sort of what we do. We represent small and medium-sized businesses as sort of an outside general counsel role, from everything from organization formation issues to contract items to real estate matters to employment issues to regulatory compliance issues, and ultimately to litigation issues if it comes to that. So we work with a ton of different industries, from representing microbreweries to representing real estate brokerage firms to solar energy companies to general contracting firms, everything in between. And so we do tend to see a lot. Won't say it all because we certainly learn new things every day with different industries, but the new one that I've gotten into just happenstance is with the new hemp regulations the federal government has passed. We've gotten a lot of clients that have transitioned or started opening their business into the industrial hemp and CBD products, which is a complicated web of things to get into, but we try to keep abreast of changes like that in various industries. So I guess I sort of open up to any questions. Obviously, my recommendation for any sort of small business, whether it's a direct salesperson or marketing, the number one thing you can do to protect yourself is to set up some sort of legal entity, whether it's a corporation or an LLC. My personal preference is an LLC because it's simpler and more flexible to utilize, and incredibly inexpensive to set up. You don't need a lawyer to do it. And one thing I didn't mention, I'm licensed in both North Carolina and Tennessee, so we work in both states. So that would be right off the bat the first thing that I would certainly encourage anyone that is a small business owner, entrepreneur in any field, that they consider incorporating their entity to protect themselves and their own personal assets.
Okay, so I do have a question, Tyler. And I'll ask this one because, I asked you for that paperwork, I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago for the LLC. And I guess my question is, how do I know when to pull that trigger?
What you mean? At what point? Are you asking the question? At what point do my revenues justify setting up an entity? Is that what you're asking?
Well, either revenues or liabilities necessitate it.
Yeah.
Like, what kinds of things would I consider in order to pull that trigger to go ahead and do the LLC?
Well, I don't really think there is a clear threshold level that you should necessarily tie it to, because the reality is it's so, when I say so inexpensive, in North Carolina, for example, you can set up an LLC that through the Secretary of State, the total cost is $127. So now, and if you treat it as a pass-through entity for tax purposes, there's no additional tax preparation costs because everything just flows through directly to your personal income tax return. So it's really a minimal cost to set up. You can obtain your EIN and go open a business banking account, business checking account, at also basically no cost. And so it's, other than there obviously some additional accounting to be done, which you should be doing anyways, even if you're treating it as a sole proprietorship. That's really the cost involved. As far as looking at from a liability standpoint, we live in a extremely litigious country, and only become more so. Everyone wants to sue everyone over anything at the drop of a hat, and fortunately or unfortunately, there are enough unscrupulous lawyers willing to take on those cases, hoping that there is an insurance policy somewhere out there that they can recover from. And usually there is, and that's why they are willing to take on, these kind of frivolous actions, because they know that the insurance companies are willing to pay out some amount of money to make it go away, because the cost of defending it is 3 or 4 or 5 times the cost of making it go away. So it's really and I'm going beyond the scope of your question, but it's really a belt and suspenders approach. You obviously need liability insurance, but some people will ask me, well, why don't I just carry liability insurance, and why do I need to set up an entity? Well, it's because they do different things. An entity is going to keep a creditor or a person that sues you based on some sort of liability. Like, let's say you're driving your vehicle to a sales meeting or a marketing meeting for a client or customer, and you get in a car accident. Well, yes, your insurance is going to potentially pay for the cost of the damage to the vehicle and medical expenses associated with it. However, that person could also sue you in your capacity as the business owner, and attempt to get at assets of you as an individual. If you don't have an entity set up, if that person prevailed in court, they could, in theory, get to your personal assets if you didn't have an entity set up, whether that vehicle was titled in the name of the entity or not. And so the insurance is there to pay the cost of defending a lawsuit. The LLC is there to prevent, if you lose that lawsuit and a judgment's entered against you, the LLC is there as a shield to block the judgment creditor, the one that gets the judgment against you, from getting to your personal assets. Because even if they get that judgment, if you have that entity set up, segregating your personal assets from the business's assets, that creditor can never get to your personal assets because of that theoretical shield that exists by virtue of the entity.
Can you say that one more time? You did like the difference in the two things
between insurance. Okay, so insurance basically exists to pay the cost of defending. Well, 2 things: pay the cost of either settling or defending a lawsuit or claim against you arising out of some liability, such as a car accident, or, say you had a store and someone slipped and fell in your store. Your liability insurance is going to step in and pay either the cost of defending a lawsuit against you for that issue, or to settle that claim against you. But if you lose that lawsuit, if they do file a lawsuit against you and you lose that lawsuit, insurance would have paid the cost of of defending that lawsuit. But for example, if you lost that lawsuit and the amount of the judgment entered against you exceeded your policy limits, which is very possible, especially in the case of a automobile policy. Many people carry, if they have a personal individual automobile policy, they carry minimum limits. And in North Carolina, that's $30,000 per person, meaning that's all the policy will pay. And if a person were to get a judgment against you in excess of the policy limits, and you did not have a legal entity in place, that person could go and collect from your personal assets. Whereas if you had that entity in place and that person got a judgment for, say, $100,000, even though your policy limits were $30,000, they could collect $30,000 from your insurance policy. However, that difference of that $70,000, they could only go after the business's assets if you had an LLC or corporation set up. And they could never go after your personal assets if that entity was set up.
That makes perfect sense to me. Thank you. I know that's probably common sense for somebody like you, but for somebody like me that doesn't deal in that every day, it makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it happens all too often because, again, I know I'm one of them, and I do occasionally deal with personal injury matters, but there are a lot of unscrupulous lawyers that will take on a case that is really not meritorious or has very little merit, or is basically frivolous, but they know, rightfully so, that an insurance company is willing to pay something to make it go away. And if you get into a situation where the amount of the damages are so great that they exceed your policy limits, and the insurance company settles that or pays out the policy limits, you're left on your own. And if you don't have an entity set up, your personal assets are on the line.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Scott, do you have a particular question for Tyler?
I do, actually. I've got by the way, nice to meet you, Tyler. Good to be in your presence, and thanks for your information. I have an LLC that I set up in Florida. I don't have a physical address there anymore. What do I need to do to become state compliant, or is it okay just to keep a Florida address? I do have somebody that lets me use his address, but when it is kind of a tax thing, I don't want to pay the extra 5% and all that stuff. But do I need to set up, like, what is it called, an extension or an alien, or I don't even know what it's called, but what should I do to become North Carolina compliant?
Well, you've got two choices. Choice one would be to register that. If you're doing, well, let me start with the threshold issue. If you are transacting business on a regular basis in North Carolina under that entity, you are required under North Carolina law to register that LLC in the state of North Carolina, which is you file paperwork that's called a certificate of application for certificate of registration to conduct business in North Carolina with the North Carolina Secretary of State's office. It's basically just a one-page form and a filing fee that you pay to the Secretary of State in North Carolina, and that, quote unquote, authorizes you to conduct business in North Carolina under that entity. That's option one. The other option would be to just form an entity in North Carolina. The reason that's, to me, that's an option you could consider is because I don't work, and I should know this, but if you, regardless of whether you register the entity in North Carolina or you form a new entity in North Carolina, you're still going to end up having to pay the annual report. In North Carolina and most states have some sort of annual fee that you have to pay. Some call it a franchise tax. Some call it an annual report fee. There's some sort of annual fee that you have to pay basically to keep your entity active. It's basically a hidden tax for the purposes of having the right to keep your entity active from year to year. In North Carolina, they charge LLCs $200 a year. That's no matter whether you form a North Carolina LLC or you register a foreign LLC in North Carolina. And so a lot of people will register a foreign entity in North Carolina, and what they end up doing is paying a annual report fee or a franchise tax fee in two separate states, because normally not every state, and that's the reason I can't remember off the top of my head. In a lot of states, they will charge you that fee where the entity was originally created, and then you're also going to have to pay it in North Carolina. So you're paying a double fee for no reason. So does that sort of answer your question? Those are the options: is either form a North Carolina LLC or domesticate the foreign LLC.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there a way to actually I could transfer my LLC from Florida to here? Do I just change the physical address, or how would that work?
You can do that. It technically would be the legal term is you would actually have to merge the LLC into North Carolina. And you can legally do that. The cost of doing that is not prohibitive, but it's substantially more than forming a new entity in North Carolina and simply dissolving the foreign entity, the Florida entity. But yes, you can merge a entity from Florida to North Carolina. The thing is, you can't do that. Well, a layperson probably could not accomplish that on their own without an attorney, versus a layperson certainly could form a new North Carolina LLC.
Okay, that makes sense. And would I be able to keep the same corporation name if I dissolved the other one and just decided to form it here in North Carolina?
As long as that name was available in North Carolina. And that same rule would apply if you domesticated that entity from Florida to North Carolina. If that entity name is already taken in North Carolina, which you can find if you Google NCSOS, which is Secretary of State, the first Google result that comes back is the search by entity name. And if you type in your entity name, it'll tell you whether or not it's taken in North Carolina.
Okay, that makes sense because the entity is attached to the state.
Yes, so you could have the same LLC name in all 50 states, and it's the Secretary of State of the state that says this name is either taken in the state or it's not.
Okay, that's great information, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
I have one more question, Tyler, and that is about like when and if I, as a solopreneur or LLC, utilize contract help. What are my responsibilities if I contract services from somebody?
When you say contract services, are you talking about like subbing something out to someone, like
Yes.
like an independent contract?
Yeah. So let me use an example. Like for me, via virtual assistant services, like I would rather do that than hire somebody to work a very small period of time for me. It's easier for me to go out and contract with a VA for some of that kind of stuff. So do I have any liabilities or responsibilities if I'm doing that?
The answer is it depends on the nature. Normally, the relationship you're talking about is a independent contractor relationship. Normally speaking, in the two parties in an independent contractor relationship, and this is the same thing whether you hire, like in a traditional sense, think about hiring a general contractor to build a house, is probably the simplest way to think about an independent contractor relationship. You, as the owner of the property, are called the principal. The contractor, the person doing the work, is known as the independent contractor. Normally speaking, the principal is not liable for anything that the independent contractor does. Meaning, if the independent contractor, for example, building your house, injures someone or does something that causes an injury to someone else while building your house, or in the performance of that, you as the principal are generally not liable for that. There are exceptions to that rule, and that those exceptions go down a rabbit hole of what are all the factors involved and what degree of control, and what the number one issue is what degree of control that you exercise over that independent contractor. And if that degree of control gets to a certain tipping point, meaning you are exercising more control over their specific task, then you become liable. Because it becomes essentially an employer-employee relationship at that point in time. An employer is always liable for its employees' negligence or misconduct, and so if the scales tip so much so in favor of you being more of an employer of that person versus a principal in an independent contractor relationship, then you become liable for their actions. But in a traditional sense, if you just hire someone to do a task, like if I hire a plumber to come and fix my toilet at my house, and while they're there, they injure someone, I'm not liable for that action. Versus I hire that not the best example, but if I hire someone as an independent contractor and then I dictate every term of what they're doing as far as the scope, the specific tasks, how they perform the task, at that point, I probably have become their employer legally their employer versus a principal and independent contractor. Does that, I know that.
Because technically
Sorry.
you're hiring them to do exactly what you want to do that you might not be capable of doing, or you have a system that you want them to follow. Since it's your system, you would be liable for it. Is that basically it?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's all about control. And the more control you exercise, the more likely you are going to be liable if something goes wrong that they do. If you are simply saying, answer my phones and get, if you're, I assume you're talking about a virtual assistant type of situation, answer my phone, answer my calls, do scheduling for me. And that's their role. Well, and they're not an employee of yours. You're not going to be liable for something they do. If that makes sense.
Yep, it does. Thank you. That answers my question. Scott, you got anything else, or?
I'd like to get a hold of you. I see you dialed in here. I'm guessing that's your cell phone number that you're dialing in on. I'd probably not call you there, but if you can get your office number to.
Sure. It's I can give you my number, but it's also just if you Google Moffatt and Moffatt and Boone, it comes up with our name and address and information. But my office number is 828 278 9123.
Great. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Tyler, is there anything else you think that we aren't thinking of?
I mean, there's that question can take you down. Yeah, I mean, those are a lot of the very basic things. One thing, and I know some of the people in the group, correct, are like direct selling type. That they're in like direct sales type roles. Is that true?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, direct sales has there's a lot more to direct sales and the issues, because I mean, parts of direct sales industries is actually federally regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. Direct sales companies get into issues with what's typically called either unfair or deceptive advertising practices or sales practices, and so that's a totally different, very long conversation. But it's something that I know a lot of people in direct sales, and I can tell you most of them don't even know that that's something that could be an issue for them. And normally it's not at the individual level, it's not a concern, but at the larger, I mean, if you own a direct sales company, those are things that there's a whole lot of litigation that goes on related to direct sales companies, and typically it usually relates to false or deceptive advertising practices.
Yeah, I've been with my company now for almost 7 years, and I've heard a lot about, because a lot of the litigation I think that's gone on nationally has had ramifications in that time period, in this last 5 to 7 years. And so I know the kinds of things that you're talking about, and so they preach at us in my company anyway about not over promising and things like that. So
yeah.
Well, then I'm going to let you go, Tyler, and I'm going to say thank you so much. Just so you know, I am going to put this recording out there and make it available for the folks in the group who were not able to be on the call tonight. So hopefully that will help you out too, Tyler.
Sure, absolutely. If you have any other questions or anyone, you're welcome to share my information with your group. And if they ever have any questions, they're always welcome to email me or give me a call.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a nice time.
Thanks for calling in. Have a great night.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Well, I'm glad, Scott, you got some questions answered.
Yeah, informative guy, It's always good to have a lawyer around.
Yeah. He every week in our Boone Business Exchange, it's a professional referral group along the lines of Business Networking International. But anyway, so every week in our referral group, in addition to Tyler's 60-second pitch, which we all get a pitch time, Tyler does a business legal minute for us every week. And so it has been so informative for me. And unlike you, I have not formed my LLC yet, and I need to get on that. I just need to do it.
Well, there's tax reasons for it. I mean, if you do with an S corp, you can write off, if that's your office right there, you can write off that. I mean, as an S corp election, you can really save you. I think the whole thing adds up to about 30 to 35% difference in your taxes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Brady talked about that a little bit. Were you on the call when Brady talked?
Last time, I think so. Yeah.
So, and Brady's in the referral group too. So that's where I got both of them, was from my referral group. But anyway, so I think that's awesome. I'm not going to keep you just to keep you, because I really wanted Tyler to be the spotlight tonight. But I do want to let you know that Yolanda, who is my co-organizer, she also has a retail job, and she had to work this evening. She's had somebody quit, and she's the manager, so she had to fill in this evening. But she and I are talking about maybe trying to make the April meeting be a face-to-face meeting. And so I will be posting that in the group. And I'm going to probably post a question in the group before long about how do people want to communicate. Like, I think, Scott, you had mentioned that you don't check Meetup very often. And so I think it would be good for those of us who might be interested in getting together outside of the group meetings, which I think meeting people is a part of what I enjoy. So
face-to-face is always different. Even we're face-to-face now, but it's a lot different to actually be in somebody's presence. So
yeah. And so I think what I'd like to do is like post a question. Hey, how do you best like to communicate? If you're willing to share contact information with others in the group, please, let us know, that kind of thing. So be looking for that input.
Yeah, that's good. And I could probably put up a website. I've got a web server that I'm paying for. So if you want to put up a forum or something, or get a domain name and have kind of a centralized place, and maybe even build the group bigger, which would be really nice.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about that in April for sure.
Okay.
Maybe have some specific ideas about that. Okay, so I'm going to look on the calendar and see if I can find the next first Thursday. I want to say it's the 4th, April the 4th, Thursday, April the 4th. And like I said, I think we're going to try to do that in person. So you watch in the group, and I'll post where we'll meet for that, unless something happens and we have a bad forecast.
Yeah, like a miracle snow again,
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we're turning the corner after this weekend. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a great one, Scott, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, likewise. Good to see you again.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.